How were you introduced to the Alexander Technique?
I was introduced to it in 1969. I was working as an actor and training, and my teacher, Sonia Moore, was a director and a teacher of the Stanislavski system. And one day she said, I have invited an Alexander Technique teacher. And we were all very excited. We thought that we might have to wear togas. You know, I thought it had something to do with Alexander the Great. To my surprise, there was this small woman that came in, and she started working with us in a silent sort of way, but she was asking us to move and be aware of our bodies. And when she placed her hands on my neck, I'll never forget it, I took the biggest breath in a long time. You know, I had asthma as a child, so she unlocked something inside of me, and it was so shocking and exciting. Shocking, exciting, and surprising that I could breathe like that. But thank God she did that, and thank God I went to that class. It totally changed my direction in my life. I decided that I wanted to know what this Alexander Technique was, and I did. Ever since that class, I've never stopped.
Where was the class? San Francisco? Or?
It was in New York.
Oh, in New York. Okay.
Yeah. The school, it was in, 1969, New York City.
But that was a fun time, yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was.
What is the Alexander Technique?
The Alexander Technique is a form of psychophysical re-education. And better said, or more simply said, it has to do with you learning about using yourself better, you know, and you learn to observe. So the first big principle that we use is awareness. You learn to become more aware of your energy and how you use it, right? And you also begin to understand how you interfere with your best use. So, you know, what that means is if I reach for this card here, if I'm collapsing just to pick up a card that weighs nothing, you know, it doesn't make sense. That's not the best use, right? So you learn that you can just lengthen, and you learn that you can bring yourself a little bit forward and just pick it up as lightly as you can, like that. If I were an athlete, that would mean that I can run faster if I begin to use more consciousness, more awareness. That's the first principle. The second principle, and probably more complicated, is the idea of slowing down. I call it, I have time. So if I say to myself, I have time, I can be okay about stepping back a little bit and taking care of myself. And in the process, I can feel more accurately what's going on in my body. And then I'm left with a choice. Do I want to continue using myself this way, or do I want to make some changes? You see, so choice is part of this technique. The third principle is that there's a relationship between, I don't know if you can see it better if I do it this way, but there's a relationship between your head and your spine. And sometimes when we are not conscious, we tense our neck a little bit too much, which begins to pull your head back and down, and then the whole spine collapses forward. And now I'm having a really hard time breathing because I've just collapsed into my diaphragm and my whole rib cage is collapsing. And then I'm beginning to hold my hip joint. So it's a system, right? So you learn that this primary control can change how you organize yourself to go into activities. I call it an attunement. So, if I compare it to music, playing music, it would be the violinist putting the violin on the shoulder and tuning the instrument, listening, and then making delicate shifts in the tension of the string to get the right pitch, right? I'm doing that with my own body. You tune yourself up so then you can go into your performance free. I know it's a little crazy, but and then we have a thing called direction. And direction has a lot to do with the organization. That where you want your head to go and what happens to the rest of the body. You see, it's a way of talking to yourself.
You said something, a mantra that you had, I have time.
Yes.
What if you don't have time, but that's been part of your calming technique?
So, lovely question. Yeah, most people think that they have no time, including myself. Sometimes we feel like we're in a rush. We have a lot to do. We have children and they're screaming. We have to take the dog on a walk. So the fact is we do. And we're not saying that people should step back for hours on end. We're talking about just a few seconds, just enough so you can improve yourself. I'm going to make an example, a really good example. If you are seeing a diver, an Olympic diver, you will see the diver going up, to the diving board, and then when they reach the edge of the diving board, they stop. They're saying, I have time to organize themselves. And then when they feel that they're ready, then they push and they dive. So it's a moment just to get it together. You see, to gather all the energy as one whole human being. I do that with actors. In fact, I think I've become famous because of that I do it that well, that they can, be on a set with 100 people, right? And they take just a few seconds before they go and do the scene.
What is rooting?
What is rooting? I think I know what you're talking about. You mean in terms of the feet. Okay, so it is very important for all of us, not just actors, but everybody, to have a relationship with the earth. In fact, right now, more than ever in our history, of human history, people are disconnected with the earth. So if you're disconnected from your roots, you make it up in the neck. So that's where that tension in the neck comes from, is that there's no foundation at the bottom. So you compensate the lack of balance by tensing the neck. You're literally holding yourself. Imagine doing a scene where you need emotion and freedom and expression. You can't express if you're still holding the jaw and the neck. You're busy doing that, and so the character is not free. Characters need freedom to express. So it is the actor's responsibility to find that freedom, and of course every character is different, so it demands different kinds of freedom.
Why is the Alexander Technique the most efficient method to help you connect with your body?
Because you use it in the act of living. So a lot of techniques have to do exercises and procedures. They're usually called procedures in the studio, and they're very small movements that you do with the breath, but you continually are doing them disconnected from activities. What was dramatic for me about Alexander and illuminating was that you did it as you applied it to things that you would do in life, like standing, bending, walking, sitting, speaking, singing, and then you take it into more complicated activities that require skill or artistry. So that is exciting. But I've had, one of my first students in San Francisco was a mailman. And I loved it because he had to do this activity of walking and delivering and repetitive, very repetitive activity. And he had back problems, and he would get tired, and he was shy, and he had really bad skin. But you know what? He became so much better, and through awareness and the process of the Alexander Technique, and somehow he got better in all these areas. Even his skin started looking more clear. I don't know why, but maybe he just was more free, you know.
Did he tell you why he wanted to take the class?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He said that if he did not study Alexander, he was going to look for medical help. He was in pain. He was in pain. So, you know, lifting all of that mail bags and stuff.
Right. Wow. What is one of your favorite stories on how the Alexander Technique has saved someone's life or improved their life?
Oh, I have many, but one that I remember, I had this Japanese older gentleman. He was about 84 years old, and he came with his son, and he wanted to walk again. He had not been able to walk, and he looked into my eyes and he said, "I want to walk to my garden. I have a beautiful Japanese garden, and I love tending to the plants, and I would love to do that again." So we worked on that, and I wasn't really sure that I could actually help him because he really was not walking at all. And then about 5 to 6 months into our work together, after his lesson, I said to him, "Would you like to go around the block with me?" So we went out to the street, and I helped him go around the block, and he did, all by himself. And of course, he went back to gardening. So that was, and now his son comes for Alexander lessons.